This is the power button from a Philips television. It should be in one piece. The hardest part of this is figuring out how to make your pieces stay in place long enough to permanently repair them. You can see how it's supposed to work now that we've got the pieces together temporarily. We've just set them on the sticky side of some masking tape. But in this case, when you push the button, that piece of plastic, which is now sapped, is supposed to flex backward, which thus hits the button on the circuit board. Obviously, it has snapped after several years of use. And you cannot just glue this back together. The glue is going to snap. It is not meant to flex. You're going to have to reinforce this joint. So when you take this out of the television or whatever you're pulling a power button like this from, you need to make a note of which parts of this are in direct contact with their surroundings, whether it's adjoining circuit boards or the outer housing of the whole device or whatever, and which parts have a bit of airspace and don't touch their surroundings. And you will be putting your reinforcement where you have that airspace, because obviously we need this to fit back in when we're finished repairing it. Here are the supplies we'll be using: a cable tie and a set of JB Weld 2 Part Epoxy. Specifically, we are going to be using a section of the cable tie that's just plain and ridged. We're not using the head, we're not using the flat tail at the ends. You may think that using a cable tie as patching material is inelegant, and it is, but you have to keep in mind that we're repairing things that were never meant to be repaired. Cable ties are a really good plastic for this. It's just an easy way to get the right kind of plastic for what we need. It is firm, but it is also flexible enough to move with the rest of the piece as we need it to. And we also all know that cable ties are incredibly sturdy. This is not going to break or rip on you. It is going to stay perfectly intact unless you choose violence. So here is the repair. It's pretty obvious what we did. We cut a short section of cable tie. We left ourselves enough to kind of have a handle to work with, which we can snip off later. And we placed a pretty good amount of epoxy on the ridge side. And then we glued it down onto this, making sure to cover that it goes across both pieces so that they are now forced to be united again. This will hold up so much better than glue alone. This is also a great way to repair cracked plastic that is not meant to flex. If simply putting epoxy or something else in the crack won't cut it, the zip tie can add a little bit of extra reinforcement right at that weak point. One thing to keep in mind is that if you have any gaps or small spaces between the pieces you are gluing back together, that could be a structural weakness. So you need to make sure, use a toothpick or something and push the epoxy in there to fill them in before you do your final assembly. I did not do that. I thought the epoxy would squeeze in on its own. It didn't. And as you can see here, we have an air gap, which I just filled in with epoxy the next day and let it sit for another night to finally cure. And here it is, installed. The television's completely reassembled. The TV does take a while to warm up, which I guess you can call vintage charm if you want. But the button itself works, and that's what we came here for. I hope this helps somebody.